Mm. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Thank you for coming back. We're continuing in this series of marriage in Islam according to the Sunnah. And of course, we're referring to the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And alhamdulillah, I think this has been a very interesting and maybe educational and also a good forum for us to talk about some issues uh, as it relates to marriage, especially for converts and reverts in Islam or those living in non-Muslim communities or societies like we are, and how to navigate those issues and sticking as close to the Sunnah as we can. So tonight, inshallah, as you can see on the screen, hopefully everyone can see. Oh, am I sharing my screen? Let me share my screen. Oh, it is sharing.
Yeah, I'm sharing the slide.
Oh, Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. Alhamdulillah. So yes, as you can see on the screen, we have some pretty heavy topics to talk about, and inshallah, we'll get through some of these, if not all of them tonight, or at least touch on them. And so before we jump into the first topic of knowing rights of husband and rights of wife and children and stepchildren, I wanted to say one thing about the wali. I actually had a conversation with another brother who made a very important point, which is something that we hadn't brought up, but I think it's important to be said, which is that this concept of wali is bigger than just marriage, by the way. It's not only limited to marriage. Unfortunately, we have a tendency to think of it just as marriage, but in Islam, generally speaking, the men are the maintainers of women, and men are responsible for the women in Islam. And typically, that responsibility by default falls on the father of the woman, of the daughter, right? So he is her first wali, and it goes down the line as we have mentioned in the past. If not the father, then the grandfather. If not him, then the uncle. If not him, then the brother. If not him, then maybe adult children or some adult family member who is a mahram to her. So, and this is the general order of things by default. And the wali um, is helpful to the sister in terms of any contracts or any dealings that business dealings or contracts that she enters into. So he represents her and makes sure that she's not being taken advantage of or being swindled in some way, shape, or form. And that includes marriage. And what the wali does is um, the father and her male relatives remain her wali until she becomes married. And after marriage, then her husband becomes her wali. And her husband is responsible for uh, representing her and protecting her and securing her. So that becomes his responsibility to provide for and protect her according to his ability, and to make sure that she's taken care of. So wali is not only during marriage or for the time of getting married, but it's a general concept that goes beyond marriage in and of itself. So hopefully that will give some additional perspective as to what the role and responsibilities are of a wali. So, inshallah, we'll jump into tonight's topic or topics, starting with knowing the rights and challenges of blended families. So, alhamdulillah, very big and important topic. So let's begin with knowing the rights. Where do the rights of Islam come from? The rights of Islam are established first and foremost are established by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran. And so this would be the first foundation or the first source of establishment of rights. And of course, this is paired with, or it is explained through the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as he commanded or spoke, and as he exemplified or otherwise expressed through his life in the lives of our mothers in Islam. So this is how we come to learn of our rights, knowing our rights. And this is obviously a very big topic, not something that we could fully explore in just a few minutes, but it's also not so complicated that we can't go over the basic rights of husband and wife or blended families even. By default, as I mentioned, the husband is responsible for the support, the maintenance of his wife or wives and children. So he's responsible to provide and protect them, and make sure that they are taken care of. The basic rights are taken care of according to his ability. And that includes any children that result from that marriage. The children, by the way, are the responsibility of their father. And if we look at it from the perspective of the wife has a duty to her husband that she listens to him and follows his advices and follows his requests, and basically that she makes herself available to him as it pertains to conjugal rights, and that she also takes care of his property and she doesn't leave her home or just take off without his permission, and that she's generally cooperative and supportive of her husband, that she doesn't allow people into his home when he's not there without his permission, and that she does not find herself alone with other men or otherwise behave in a way that is unbecoming of a wife or of a Muslim, of a Muslima. So these are the general rights between a husband and wife. And as I mentioned, there's a lot more to that than what I've mentioned, but this is just a high level review of the basic rights. Now, in terms of blended families, and when we say blended families, we're referring to families that have stepchildren involved, or it could also mean families that have different perspectives. Let's say there's a Muslim husband married to a Christian wife or to a Jewish wife. So blended could have multiple meanings. I'm assuming that this question is, or this bullet point is referring to stepchildren. And the right of support and provision does not change. So when there are stepchildren involved into a marriage, the responsibility of financial support still belongs to the biological father. And that does not change in a blended marriage or blended family. Although the husband in this blended family should also um, do his best to be fair, to be just, and to be kind to those stepchildren. Um, Even though they may not be his biological children, those children also have rights, and they have rights to be treated with dignity and respect, and should not be treated less than because they're not his biological children. Children also have a right to having a good name. So parents should give their children names with good meanings. And if children have a name that has a bad meaning, then they should change it to a name that has a good meaning associated with it. And if the parents refuse to do that, then when the child becomes of age, they may choose to do that for themselves. That's one of the rights of children, that they are provided a loving household, a respectful household, and that they're given a good name, and that their basic rights are met. Stepchildren should have access to their biological parent. So there's going to be a bit of negotiation oftentimes that needs to happen with the biological parent and the step parent cooperating with each other so that the child has access to their biological parent and that they also have access to their new step parent that lives in the home with them. Any questions so far? I know I'm kind of talking a little bit fast, so I want to make sure that I'm giving people a chance if any questions or comments come up as we go along. Anything so far? I said a lot. Okay. Hope I'm not putting you all to sleep tonight.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Just a couple comments about the rights of the children
Yes.
as well. I'm probably not going to pronounce this right, but the right that the son has when he's born, the
Yes.
ceremony,
Yes.
also the right to be breastfed up
Yes.
to a certain age,
Yes.
as well as right to an education, inshallah.
Very good. Jazakallah khair for the reminder. So,
Oui.
as Sister Azizah mentioned, the hakika, or the naming ceremony, which typically happens within the first week or two of the child being born, doesn't have to be, but it's generally a practice where the birth of the child is celebrated. Oftentimes, a goat or lamb is sacrificed if it's a boy, especially. And it's a way of giving thanks to Allah Azza wa Jal for such a great blessing. And it's a way for the community to come and acknowledge and celebrate this new blessing in the life of this family that they have been blessed with a new family member, a new child, new baby. And as Sister Azizah mentioned, another right of the child is that the mother breastfeeds a child up to the age of 3, provided that she's able and capable of doing so. Sometimes there are health reasons why. Sometimes there are, practical reasons why it may not happen. Some children just reject breastfeeding for some reason. Other cases, mothers don't produce enough milk to sustain the child for some reasons. So there could be many reasons, several reasons why it doesn't happen. But by default, the child has a right to be breastfed up to age of 3. After that point, the child should be weaned from breastfeeding. And lastly, there's a right of circumcision, especially for, not especially for Muslim boys to be circumcised. That's another right. and also what was mentioned was tarbiyah or education, that this child is brought up in a household learning about Allah Azza wa Jal, that they are taught the basics of their religion. They're taught the aqidah, the basic aqidah. And you can start, or parents can start by teaching the Hadith Jibril, which goes over the 5 pillars of Islam, which goes over the 6 or 7 beliefs of a Muslim, and generally covers the basics, aqidah of being a Muslim. The child should be taught how to pray. The child should be encouraged to fast. The child should also, learn about being charitable and being kind and so on and so forth. Sister Malika, you have a comment?
Me? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you saw me. I was looking for the hand button. I missed a little bit of what you were talking about. If there's a step parent involved, and say, I'm not saying it really happened, but say the child's other parent died, then does in my case, does the stepfather take more responsibility, or does that go to some other member of the mother's family? You know what I mean? Just curious.
So if the biological father passes away, my understanding is that someone from the biological father's family would step up and take on that responsibility of supporting and providing for that child. So the uncle, the grandfather, something like that. It would still rest in the family of the biological father. But of course, the biological mother and the stepfather in this case, this is a family. So, I mean, realistically, we're all going to pull together to provide for this child. But in terms of legal responsibility and what is required is that the financial support of that child belongs to the father, the biological father, and so on and so forth from that side of the family. Bismillah, Sister Azizah.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Brother Islam.
Brother Islam. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
I had a question with two. One of them was about the orphans. So, like, say, for instance, if the child was from the mother and she entered an Islamic marriage, but the family of the child, boy or girl, had no family lineage outside of the mother, how would that play? And then on the other one was if you had children of age and you had, like, the stepfather was Christianity, and then you had the other stepfather, I mean the father was Christianity, then the father and the stepfather was Islamic, but then you have the Jesus thing and the Trinity and the crosses and all this. Where does the rights fall in with that? And where does that go? I mean, I might have loaded you up with it, but how are you gonna approach that, my brother?
So if, let's say, for example, that this child, then the mother's unable to determine who is the biological father of this child. Let's just imagine that she doesn't know who fathered this child. This child is truly an orphan. In that case, the stepfather would be greatly rewarded for assuming responsibility of this orphan child who has no father or family to take care of him or her, right? So that would be something rewardable and something very beneficial. Again, that would be something that is highly how can I say, something that Allah Azza wa Jal would be pleased with, and something, inshallah, that Allah would reward this man for doing. But in that case, the mother would have to assume responsibility for her child if she can't determine who is the father. and she would be responsible for that child, because there's no man who can be determined as being responsible for him or her, for that child. And in terms of having a blended family where the biological father is of a different religion, again, we're talking about two different things. So financial support does not change, whether the biological father is a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, or any other faith for that reason. So in this case, the biological father is still financially responsible for his children that he fathered. In terms of religious teachings, that is, it may be difficult, but you have to just, how can I say, teach what we believe to be true and correct, teach our Aqidah, and the biological father, in this case, I assume would teach what he believes is correct. And it does present a bit of confusion or difficulty. In this case, I would recommend that the parents, meaning the biological father and the new blended family, try to find a way to work together so that the child or children do not become confused or feel conflicted. They have to try to find a way to cooperate and work with each other. And by the way, Islam and Christianity have more in common than we do have a difference. So you try to focus in areas where you agree and where we can work together. And with those areas where we disagree, we have to teach and be an example for what we believe in. We can't twist the truth or twist what we believe to make things smooth. We say, Lakum dinakum waliya din. For you is your way, and for me is mine. And this is Islam. We cannot start twisting and trying to, make everything smooth just so that everyone can be happy. We have to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost, and let the chips fall where they may.
Okay.
Alaikum.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
So I would think that, if you have two people of two different religions, well, obviously a Muslim man and then whatever the religion of the woman, if she's a Christian or a Jew, that when they do the contract, is there still a contract or some form of that they would have these conversations about, if we have children, some of the practices may be different. So I would think that they would have that conversation. But when it comes to Salat, then how would that work? Practice wise.
As far as what? As far as teaching Salah?
Correct. So let's say the woman is either a Jew or a Christian. Would the children then still participate? I mean, I think it would just depend on what the agreement would be between the husband and the wife, right?
Yeah, well, if the husband is praying at home and he's teaching his children, giving tarbiyah to his children, then they will be learning about Islam and they'll be observing and hopefully participating in the Salah at home. So I don't really see that as any different, whether she's a Christian, a Jew, or anything else. It only becomes problematic, I think, when the biological father, the children go stay with the biological father for extended periods of time, and I would say the biological parent who is non-Muslim, and the children spend extended periods of time with that parent, then it becomes more problematic. So these are complicated, you have to take a case by case. It's hard to give a general answer, but in the home, the blended home, the parents have to continue to teach and lead by example. And you have to deal with those issues as they come about. Bismillah, Sister Julie.
Yes, I to add to that point, I would say if we needed to find some general terms around it, it would be from a Muslim perspective, it's our obligation to teach. It's our obligation to encourage, right? But and remembering that there's no compulsory in religion, so the children really are being brought up to be influenced, but eventually have to choose for themselves, right? So if you have a Muslim household where both parents are Muslim, everything's Muslim in the household, and the teachings, they're still going out into the world and being influenced by other perspectives. So I think you would handle it best the same way is, of course, having those discussions, coming to some agreeable terms, and go from there. But if you say had a difficult situation where you're teaching one thing, then they go spend time with the other parent if you're say divorced or separated, um, and they're getting a whole nother set of teachings, and that person may be undermining what you're trying to teach at home. I mean, Allah knows best at that point. You just do your best to teach what you know is the truth, and encourage the child as best you can in your household.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Okay. Any other comments or questions about that? Inshallah. Okay. Just to jump into rights of husband and rights. Well, we kind of did talk about it, but just go a little deeper into it. And there's a few hadith that are mentioned here on this slide that we can use as a foundation. The first one is an ayat from Surah An-Nisa, and it says in translation, "And give to the women whom you married their mahr, or obligatory bridal money, given by the husband to his wife at the time of marriage with a good heart." So talking about mahr, which is the marriage gift to the bride, this is something which is agreed upon before marriage. It is due at the time of marriage unless the wife agrees to postpone or delay it for a later time, or give the husband time to pay the mahr. If they divorce before consummating the marriage, the wife is not due any mahr. If they consummate the marriage and then divorce, the husband is not due a return of his mahr. If the marriage dissolves because there's some physical, let's say, inability to perform the conjugal rights, let's say the husband can't perform or the wife cannot perform, if depends on how far things go, the mahr is in question, but she should be due something in that case. And that is something that it may not be 100% of the mahr. If it ends in divorce, by the way, then that's something that can be worked out between them. The mahr is a gift to the wife, and she may spend it as she pleases. The husband cannot direct his wife or force her to spend it in any specific way, and nor should anyone else for that matter, meaning her family, his family, or any other person tell the wife how to spend her marital gift. It's a gift to her, and she does with it as she pleases. She may choose to use it in her household or help her husband or help, whatever, but that's completely her choice. And if the husband reneges on his mahr and does not fulfill the mahr, then the wife has a right to divorce because he broke the contract. He did not fulfill the contract. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in regards to the mahar. And we already talked about the amount of mahar and so on and so forth, so we don't have to go into that again. And it says here that Abu Hurairah, before we go on, any questions about or comments about mahar? Okay, and by the way, while we're on this topic, conjugal rights is a very major part of marriage. I think we should spend a little bit of time on this topic. So conjugal rights, we'll talk about the husband and then the wife. Conjugal rights for the husband is that the husband has a right to his wife. Some scholars say when he requests, as long as she's able physically, she's not ill or injured, anything like that, or has any medical reason, or she's not on her meds, that would be a disqualifier. But typically speaking, or generally speaking, the husband has a right to enjoy his wife. And on the wife's side, the wife has a right as well. But her right is the minimum for her would be every 4 days. Why 4 days? Because if a husband had up to 4 wives, which is permitted in Islam, that would mean her rotation would be every 4 days. So the minimum right for her would be every 4 days. And she has a right as much as it requires for her to remain chaste. So if a wife has a very high, I would say, drive, then, she may require more intimacy. And if she's not, a woman has a very high desire in this way, then it could be less, but that's something which is negotiable. Now, a wife may refuse her husband up to 3 days, by saying, that she's not in the mood, or she's not this, she's not that, whatever. After the 3rd day, the husband should begin to advise her and to counsel her by reminding her to fear Allah in his rights, and that he should educate her as to what his rights are according to Islam. And then it can go from there. The husband has a right to seek counsel or intervention. Could be from her family, his family, or someone in the community, and so on and so forth, until they can come to a resolution. A husband cannot refuse support for his wife because she's neglected his right. So in other words, the Prophet ﷺ is quoted as saying, there should be no harming nor reciprocating harm. So just because one of the spouses may be refusing the right does not give the other spouse a right to now abuse the first one. There should be no harming nor reciprocating harm. So instead of harming, the husband has a responsibility to look for a resolution and not go down this path of tit for tat.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Bismillah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
I think this is sort of I don't think one wants to wait until you get married to find out your spouse got a big battery.
Yes.
Super energetic. The thing is, how does one query this in a respectful way or through a third party to kind of so that there's no big surprises, inshallah, when you get there. I, I think this is critically important because we have some references in the hadith to a sister complaining
Yes.
on this very point. So I think it's prudent to kind of find some way to kind of gauge what we're getting ourselves into. I think there's a way to do it respectfully. Maybe you have some suggestions?
Well, Allah understand. I think what you said, Brother Saif, maybe a week or two before, I can't recall exactly when, was a great suggestion, which is that the women from the husband's side should also play a role in, I guess, trying to ascertain some of these sensitive topics or sensitive questions. You know, maybe the mother or the sister of the husband can talk to her and see, what are her needs? How often does she think about it, or does she desire it? That would give him an idea before getting into it. If they are really like on opposite ends of the spectrum, and Sister Cadian has a very good point. You don't always know. But if the husband and wife are on opposite ends of the spectrum, then they should try to be patient with each other. Be patient. Don't force the issue, but rather the husband should try to find ways to entice his wife, to soften her heart towards him, to romance her, and to make her more willing or open to the idea of accommodating him. If it's on the reverse side, the wife can also do things to entice her husband. If she has a higher desire than the husband, then she can do things that might entice him and invite him, and make him more willing and desirous to accommodate her. But in either case, the husband and wife should look for ways to entice and invite the other spouse without becoming angry or demanding. Because once you go down that path of anger and it creates resentment. And it actually becomes counterproductive. And Allah knows best. I hope that helped, or that's my best answer. Brother Saif, did that offer anything?
Well, I was talking to a young fellow recently, and he complained that we didn't warn him what it means to be getting old and this sort of thing. And I think, as men, we have different issues than women do,
Yes.
And one as you get older, you run into the plumbing don't work as well.
Yes.
There's prostate issues. There's all kinds of stuff that one needs to as an adult, we ought to be able to have some way, even if through a third party, to put these things on the table, rather than wait until that special night, and then you oh my God, yeah, I didn't sign up for this,
Yes.
So just say, we gotta discuss these matters in a respectful and decent way.
And to be honest with you, and Jazakallah khair for bringing that up, because it only helps the husband and wife to be as honest and upfront as possible, because after marriage it's too late. Okay, if the husband knows he has a very high drive, he should express that before marriage, so that if the wife is not into that, that she can raise this before marriage, and vice versa. It could go the opposite way. If the husband can't perform for one reason or another, he should be upfront and say, listen, I have this situation, and I may not always be able to, or maybe not as often as you would like. And that's something she needs to know, because after marriage, there's no solution sometimes except divorce. And it doesn't help anyone to hide these details. It only makes it more complicated. And I see a comment. I see a couple of comments. So Sister Katie said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say the name, but one comment is that some folks may not know or can change, especially if it's their first marriage. That is true. Sometimes the drive increases or decreases after marriage. Maybe before marriage, this person, that's all they could think about. And then after marriage, suddenly their desire has waned for one reason or another. And in that case, again, my answer is the same, that they should be patient with each other. And the husband should have patience with his wife and vice versa. Sister Julie?
Check. Let me make a quick point on this thing about not knowing.
Yes.
The case of people that have never had experience, that's a different case.
Yes.
Two bungling idiots, they'll be all right. I'm not talking about those people, okay?
Yes.
I'm talking about people that know. That
yes.
had experience.
Yes.
That, so I'm not talking about those people.
Yes. Okay, and then another comment is, it depends on the situations and circumstances between both sides. It's important to implement different aspects. Yes, so the couple, there may be reasons why one of the spouses is not interested. And, you have to be delicate, because a man's ego is a very sensitive thing. Wives should know this, but if you don't know, you heard it here first, that a man's ego is a very important aspect of him as a man, to know that he's capable of pleasing his wife. And if he cannot, for one reason or another, it's a big deal. And likewise, even women have an ego when it comes to this, and want to know that they are, desirous of their husbands desire them, and he's not gawking over other women. And when it comes to her, he's like, blah, 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 So it goes both ways. And there may be underlying reasons. It could be health reasons, and it could be otherwise. Maybe they're hormonal reasons why the desire is not there. In any case, it's going to require honesty, communication, and patience, and prayer and dua. That Allah Azza wa Jal put the love and put the mercy between the husband and wives, so that they can enjoy each other and be happy with each other. And sometimes things get kind of boring. So you have to keep it exciting, keep it new, and try different ways of going about things. So you do what you have to do to keep your marriage happy, and keep everyone away from sin and zina. And Allah knows best.
Can I say something?
Please, Bismillah. Wa alaikum salam.
Well, for the hadith, just a reminder, I think we went through this maybe the first 2-3 days. We started according to one hadith, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that a woman may be married for her wealth, beauty, lineage, or her religious commitment. And he encouraged marrying the one who is religiously committed, period. So, we got to be careful because some, whether men or women, they probably had this addiction, sexual addiction, psychological trauma or something, that that's all they want. Okay, but in Islam, we got to go back to the root. And in Islam, we are here to be closer to Allah. If you marry at the age of 20s, 30s, 40s, later on, if even you have 4 wives, at the end of the day, when we all turn 70 or 80, sex is no longer an issue. It's all the iman and the how the time we spend together to be closer to Allah. There's a lot more than just sexual. Of course, it is important element at a certain age, and for those who have married before, it's easier for them to to openly select, okay, I'm not into that, I'm more into this, and more comfortable. But for people who never been married, regardless of their age, it's really in an awkward situation and they don't even know what they can perform, what they cannot perform at that night. They don't know. They thought they know, but sometimes they don't know what they don't know. And how can you answer this question?
Well,
SubhanAllah.
wa alaikum salam. Jazakallah khair.
Oh,
And again, I think this goes to an important point of compatibility. Sometimes if you have one person who's never been married or inexperienced marrying a person with experience, let's say there's one person who lived a life outside of Islam or outside of the bounds of Islam, the limitations of Islam. This person was, out there, so to speak. And now they come to marriage. And if they marry a person who does not have experience in this area, that's a red flag. That is an incompatibility, potential incompatibility. And I think that's kind of what Brother Saif was mentioning or alluding to, is that if you have two people, inexperienced virgins, they've never had a spouse before, never experienced anything like this before, they don't know what they don't know. And they would only learn each other. And by the way, it's a blessing because they have nothing to compare it to. Only they learn each other. And as long as they don't invite outside influences through watching haram porn and other things like this, then inshallah, they will be pleased with each other because this is all they know. And this is, the love is between these two. They have a special bond that no one else shares with them. But if you have this situation where people, had multitudes of partners before coming into a marriage, it can sometimes cause people to compare my current spouse with my previous experiences. And that introduces an added layer of challenge. But the reality is that, as I mentioned, conjugal relations is not as important to some as it is to others. People have different level of desire, and people have different level of ability. So it's a complicated topic, but it's something that we all married couples at some point or another have to contend with. This aspect of marriage. Is it enough? Is it not enough? Is, whatever. We all have to deal with challenges in this department. Okay, the adhan for Maghrib came in already, so I want to give anyone a closing thought or question before we close out, inshallah. Any burning comments or questions before we conclude tonight? No one? Nothing? Okay, Jazakallah khair. I want to thank everyone again for attending and for your comments and your reflections and your corrections. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give his mercy and put barakah in the families and the marriages, that we can be happy and lead happy lives and be happy families, and be good examples for our children and for our communities. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to heal any marriages that are struggling. And may Allah ta'ala guide us to pious spouses, those who are looking for marriage. And may Allah ta'ala keep us pious, those who are already married. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله
جزاك الله
وبركاته.
خير شيخ علي.
وإياك.
Take care.